A gorilla at the city zoo suddenly grabbed a 6-year-old girl out of the crowd, dragging her into the shadows. Parents screamed, staff froze, thinking the worst. But when the cameras caught what the gorilla really wanted, it shattered millions of hearts. What happened next between a dying baby, a desperate mother, and a little girl will break you. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and the city zoo buzzed with noise. Laughing kids, chatting parents, the occasional call of an exotic bird echoing overhead. The gorilla enclosure, one of the zoo's main attractions, was surrounded by families. Children pressed their faces against the thick railing. Parents sipped coffee and snapped photos. In the far corner of the enclosure, a massive female gorilla sat hunched against the concrete wall. She rocked slowly back and forth, her huge hands limp in her lap, her dark eyes hollow, barely blinking. Something was wrong, but no one noticed. A 6-year-old girl in a pink hoodie and light-up sneakers leaned over the barrier, waving at the gorilla, giggling. She turned to her father to say something, and that's when it happened. The gorilla moved. No, exploded. In 2 monstrous strides, she closed the distance between herself and the barrier. Her arm shot through the heavy iron bars like a piston. Before anyone could scream, before the father could react, the gorilla's massive hand clamped around the little girl's torso, lifting her clean off the ground. A beat of stunned silence, then chaos. People screamed. Mothers grabbed their children, cups and cameras crashed to the ground. The girl's father lunged forward, grabbing for his daughter's sneaker. But he was too late. The gorilla yanked the girl into the enclosure with a terrifying ease, disappearing into the heavy brush and fake rocks near the back. Security alarms blared. Zookeepers sprinted toward the scene. Somebody shouted for tranquilizers. Somebody else cried. Inside the darkening enclosure, the girl's pink hoodie flashed once between the trees, then vanished into the shadows. And just like that, she was gone. The only thing left was the stunned silence of a crowd realizing they had just watched something irreversible happen. And not a soul knew yet why. The gorilla's rough grip tightened around the girl's waist as they slipped deeper into the dim heart of the enclosure. Twisted branches and thick undergrowth clawed at the girl's sneakers. Her sobs were small, breathless hiccups now, swallowed by the dense, humid air. Each dragging step felt endless. Time stretched, twisted. The girl could barely see where they were going, only the flicker of a weak maintenance light blinking somewhere ahead. The world outside, the panicked screams, the banging on glass, the alarms, it all faded into a dull, distant roar. Here, there was only the beating of 2 terrified hearts. Finally, the gorilla stopped. She turned toward a corner hidden by fake rocks and a fallen tree trunk. There, lying limp on a bed of torn burlap sacks and dry straw, was a tiny gorilla infant. Its body barely moved, a flicker of breath, a twitch of fingers. One glassy eye struggled to stay open. The smell of sickness, of helpless decay, was overwhelming. It clung to the air like invisible chains. The girl blinked rapidly, heart hammering against her ribs. The gorilla, this monster she thought had stolen her, gently set her down beside the baby. The mother hovered over them, her massive shadow trembling. She extended one huge hand toward her dying child, then stopped, fingers curling inward like broken branches. A low, hollow sound rumbled from her chest, a sound raw with sorrow. The girl, frozen at first, slowly understood. This wasn't an attack. This wasn't rage. It was a call for help. A mother's last, desperate wish that someone, anyone, would stay, would witness, would not let her baby die alone. And through the fog of terror and confusion, the 6-year-old girl did the one thing she could. She stayed. The little girl's breathing slowed, her tiny body still trembling from fear. but her instincts shifted. Carefully, she crawled closer to the dying baby, inch by inch across the scratchy floor. Her hand hovered uncertainly before she finally, so gently, brushed her fingers through the thin fur on the baby's tiny arm. The mother gorilla let out a low, quivering sound, a sound closer to a sob than any animalistic noise. She sank onto her haunches beside them, her massive shoulders slumping, her head bowing low as if crushed by invisible weight. The baby gorilla let out a weak, rattling breath. Its chest rose and fell in painful, shallow jerks. The girl looked up at the grieving mother. Their eyes met for the first time. Not human and animal, not predator and prey. Two mothers' hearts, one just beginning, one shattering. Without thinking, the girl did what no adult could have taught her. She shifted closer to the towering beast and wrapped her small arms around the gorilla's thick, shaking body. The gorilla stiffened for a moment, then slowly, ever so slowly, melted into the embrace. She pulled the girl close with a tenderness that defied her strength, resting her heavy hand against the child's back. Both of them trembling, both of them crying. The baby gorilla whimpered one last time, a thin, almost inaudible sound. The little girl pressed her forehead to the baby's side, holding it gently as the life inside it flickered and began to fade. Inside that den, surrounded by death and grief, love didn't need words. It was enough to simply be there. Two species, one loss, one silent goodbye. Outside the enclosure, dozens of hands gripped metal railings, breathless. Zoo staff and emergency responders crowded around security monitors, frozen, radios crackling in their untouched hands. Nobody moved. Nobody dared. On the grainy surveillance feed, they watched a scene no one could have predicted, and no one would ever forget. Inside the dim, flickering den, the little girl and the mother gorilla knelt side by side, both clinging to the dying baby, both refusing to let go. The baby gorilla gave a weak shudder, a final, broken gasp, and then silence. The little girl lifted her head slowly. She looked at the tiny, still form in front of her, tears blurring her vision. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just placed her small hand over the baby's heart, as if willing it to beat again. The mother gorilla let out a low, guttural moan, a sound so raw, so saturated with grief, that even the hardest men watching behind the screens felt something inside them crack. With a tenderness impossible to believe from such a monstrous body, the gorilla cradled her dead infant in one arm and pulled the human child closer with the other. The girl pressed her head against the gorilla's massive chest. She could hear the heavy, broken thudding of the beast's heart. Not wild, not furious, just grieving. The two stayed like that, a tiny child and a mourning titan, locked together in shared loss. The world outside blurred away. Minutes passed, long, aching minutes where time seemed to stop. Finally, the mother gorilla, moving with slow, deliberate care, lifted her head toward the entrance of the den, toward the humans she knew were watching. Her dark eyes met the zookeepers through the cameras, eyes full of sorrow, but no rage. She shifted, nudging the girl gently toward the entrance, letting her go. It wasn't surrender. It was trust. Trust from a creature whose heart had just been ripped apart. The girl stood up slowly, wobbling, dazed. She took one last look at the baby, then at the giant who had stolen her, and given her something even greater, the weight of her final goodbye. When the staff finally reached her, the little girl didn't fight. She didn't cry out. She just whispered, barely loud enough to hear. She didn't want to hurt me. She just didn't want to be alone. And somewhere deep inside the concrete and steel of the zoo, a broken-hearted mother gorilla sat in the shadows, rocking, alone again.